Welcome to ElevatePod, where we elevate your mindset, inspire your spirit, and ignite your leadership journey. This podcast is brought to you by Elevate Leadership Services. My name is Pearl.
And my name is Chibwe.
We are the co-founders of Elevate Leadership Services and the hosts of Elevate. The ElevatePod is dedicated to inspiring and empowering our listeners with a focus on minorities and immigrants, offer tools, resources, and pathways to foster personal and professional growth.
And today we are so delighted to interview Lisa Lennon-Wilkins, who will share her experiences that she has, her thoughts and her journey on equity in education, unlocking potential, transforming futures. As we know, education is often called the great equalizer, but for millions, the playing field is anything but equal. Equity in education is not about giving every learner the same thing. It's about giving every learner what they need to thrive. And today we are diving into what equity in education truly means, why it matters, and how it shapes not just classrooms, but communities, economies, and generations. But before we start our conversation with Lisa, I would like to give you her short bio, rich, but we are not going to dive on all the things she has done, but just touch the tip of what she has done. Lisa Wilkins, Lennon-Wilkins, is currently serving as the president of Lodi Education Association. She is based in Stockton, California. She started being a president since June of 2022. She is affiliated, the Lodi Education Association is affiliated with the California Teachers Association, which is the CTA, and the National Education Association, abbreviated as NEA. Lisa represents 14,000 educators in the Lodi Unified School District. She brings extensive experience in her current role from experiences for over 2 decades as an educator within the Lodi Unified District. She also serves as a director in charge of equity team for the San Joaquin County. Prior to this, she worked in the Silicon Valley in various roles as an accountant executive in Bio Online, data communication group at AT&T Pacific Bell, and as a product manager for the East Park products. She also worked as a career marketing communication, mostly around communication and wide area networking, which is a lot of mouthful, but what this simply means that what makes your internet and my internet to work in Ascend Communications. Lisa Lennon-Wilkins holds a bachelor in zoology from the University of California, Davis. She is a wonderful mother to her son and an aunt to many. So Lisa, do you have anything you can add to this short bio of yours?
Well, you were off by a factor of 10. The Lodi Education Association has 1,400 members, not 14,000, but that's okay.
Mm-hmm.
Whew, that would be
1,400. Sorry. Okay, it's all right.
That's okay. Factor of 10. But I was going to say, because Elk Grove is one of the biggest, Elk Grove Teacher Association is one of the biggest ones in California, and they have, I want to say 2,300 teachers, something like that. They're big.
Okay.
But yeah, no, 14,000. Oh my gosh, I couldn't even imagine.
Oh yeah, I put a 0. So.
Yep, factor 10.
All right. Okay, thank you. So that's what we have. So for me, I would like to go, I think, to Pearl. Pearl, can you come in?
So today's conversation asks a simple but powerful question. How do we move from intention to impact? Equity is an education equity in education is not solely an educator's responsibility. It's a leadership issue, a policy issue, as well as a community issue. So when education systems are equitable, societies prosper. When they're not, inequities compound. And that's what we're here to learn today. So we'll dive right into it. And my first question to you, Lisa, is how do you define equity in education in simple terms? And how is it different from equality?
Well, I think both you and Chibwe have talked about this. So basically, equality is giving every student the same materials and expecting them to be able to use them and have the same outcome. And that just does not work because students learn differently. Some of them, they have different modalities, whether it be, oral, talking about it, or oral, hearing about it. It could be kinetic, where they have to physically interact with it. Some also, too, we have to look at where is the child starting from? I teach secondary, and students are often below grade level. So if you give them a textbook at grade level, they are not going to be able to maybe even read it, much less comprehend it, right? So equity is saying, okay, I have to look at each student where they are now and find a way to engage them and get them to learn the same material as their peers. So it just means adapting lessons to meet the needs of all the students in your classroom. And it's not easy all the time, just because of the variety of students we get in a classroom.
All right. Okay. Thank you. Any follow-up from you, Cal?
The last statement spoke to what I was going to ask about. How do you handle that with the diversity in the classrooms, being able to tailor everything to a student? That must be challenging.
Well, thank goodness for the internet. I often will look at the material that is in the textbook, for example, and look at the main themes, and then I will try to find readings that are at a grade appropriate reading level for that student. And I can, post that through Google Classroom or email it to them, whatever I need to do. Being in science, you get to do a lot of hands-on. And that to me is like the best way to learn, is to make them do something and like figure stuff out kind of on their own. I think that's a great way to do it. That's not always great for ELA, but for things like math and science, doing manipulatives is great. There's all sorts of things that you can do, and there's all kinds of resources now that you can look up that, my mom was a teacher. She's 93 now. And she didn't have access to some of these. You basically got what you got, and you had to hope for the best. Now teachers are realizing that that's not enough. We got to go that extra mile. We got to find out what it is that the student needs. And then sometimes we have to fight to get those resources. For example, I have had students that are not, well, English is a second language to them. So getting them things like headphones and being able to translate the text into another language and have them listen to it in class while everyone else, we're following along, maybe, in English, reading things and kind of tearing that text apart. They can at least address it in their own language and then kind of, parse it from there. So there's just so much now that we've got. It takes a lot more work. You talk about teacher burnout. This is one of the reasons, because we are doing that work. We're pulling those things together for our students.
Yeah. Sometimes we underrate the impact the teachers have done. But when we look at each and every one of us, the three of us here, we wouldn't be here if it wasn't for the teachers that supported us in our walk of life, that fought for whatever we needed in our walk of lives. And today's teaching is actually even more complicated with everything else, I think, in terms of the student, the policies, and so forth and so on, and the budget cuts here and there. So they are not helping at all. But I would now come back and pivot towards you as an individual, as an educator, a person who chose education. I think when we looked at your history, your bio, you served in Silicon Valley under different capacity, but you ended up pivoting back to education. So what single experience or person helped you change your trajectory and inspired you to set the goals that you set today as an educator?
I don't think there was one person. I think the primary event, though, was having a child who was having learning difficulties. And my son, has ADHD. He is high functioning, very high functioning, but considered on the spectrum. And he had some behavior issues because of that. Just trying to figure that out. There's a lot of educators in my family. My mother, like I said, was an educator. I have tons of aunts and cousins who are educators. My sister kind of did a similar trajectory where she worked in San Francisco and just decided that, if I want to have, she wanted to have a big family. She has 4 kids. I'm going to need to find a profession that is more family friendly, because she was kind of in the same boat as me. So she quit and moved back home, lived with my mom, and went to Sac State and got her credential. So it was just a lot of things. And one of the things too, within Silicon Valley, I would go to some of these meetings and I would be the only woman in the room, or if it was a big gathering, it was literally you could count on one hand how many women were there. Especially when I was doing the product development for the wide area networking. So that, it was like, where are the women here?
Yes.
Why aren't we having women in this room? And that was a big part of it for me, is we got to inspire these kids to go into these fields and make them feel like they can achieve it. They can do it.
Yeah, wonderful. Yes, I think we need people to go and expose the children and the students to many career choices that are there, because very few, especially for women, especially that we're talking to, is they only know certain careers. You either become a nurse, you become a teacher, or you become this, but they don't know what is out there. So yeah, so that's very good. Oh, thank you. Okay. All right.
Yeah, so my next question, I think, to piggyback on what you said, underrepresentation. You've gone in rooms where you're wondering, where are the women here? Now, bringing it down to the schools there, how can schools better support students from marginalized or underrepresented communities? How can we better support that from that level?
So there's a couple of things that I've noticed. So I've always taught in a Title I school. And that means that 75% of the students, it used to be based on free or reduced lunch. Now they base it on whether or not they can receive SNAP benefits, right? And so a lot of these families don't have resources such as transportation. I've had several families who don't have cars. Their kids get a bus to school and a bus home, which means that after school enrichment activities, they don't get to participate in. I ran MESA, which was math, engineering, science, and science achievement. You can actually get scholarships through Mesa if you continue through high school, right? I helped with Science Olympiad. But these kids, you got to find a way to connect them, right? So clubs, sports, all that stuff, we need to have transportation so kids can do that. And you talked about policy issues. We used to have where schools worked with the local transit authorities to get buses. And mass transit funding has been shrunk over the past several decades. So there are very few buses that are running. And so, public transportation isn't available to a lot of these kids either. So, that just cuts off that opportunity. If you don't have students feeling like they are part of their community at school, not just socially with their friends, but through these after school activities, then they are not going to look forward to expanding their education, right? Yes. Another issue I find is parents, especially parents who are immigrants or maybe even first generation. They don't understand the school system in the U.S. They don't understand how to get their child in college, what classes they need to take, what scholarships may be available to them, and things like that. Even going into a trade school, how do we get those kids into the next level so that they are, that's the American dream, is that you are going to do better than your parents, right?
Correct.
So that's the American dream. So how are we going to push that up? So one of the things that has been happening is CTA has been pushing this idea of community schools. And in a community school, there are other services available to both students and their families to help them succeed. So some of the schools, like in LA, I know there's a school, they have medical care there, social workers, access to financial assistance. There are some community schools who even have laundry service. So the homeless population can, come in and get their clothes done, for free. So I have to say the state of California gave a little bit of money, not a lot, but they gave some money for school districts to explore this opportunity and then eventually build one. And the whole idea of a community school is it's not just run by the teachers. It's a coalition that's run by teachers, parents, and students to determine what kind of services they need and how to spend the grant money to make those services happen. So I would like to see more of that. That is one way, schools can support our community. And again, build that community. Like the school is the hub, right? Your family can go to the school as a hub and get answers to some of these questions, get help and support for families that, don't know what to do. And so, I would love to see more of that.
Okay. Maybe I can follow up on that, especially for community school. Maybe you can elaborate a little bit on that. And maybe the question that for me I heard is, if somebody goes to the community school, can they continue to go to the actual school, or they have to choose one versus the other?
So right now, the way, and I'm just starting to learn about it because I've been working with one person at Lodi who's kind of interested, one of the directors there, and wants to learn a little bit more. So we're kind of going through this journey together because I don't know a lot. But the idea is that you would have a school. It might be a high school. It might be an elementary school. It would be a hub for that community. So you don't necessarily have to have your child there. And like maybe if it's an elementary school, maybe your child, moves up to a middle school or a high school. But the idea is that the hub is there. It's in the community. You know where to go. And it's based at a school site because everybody knows the school site, right? So it doesn't, you don't have to go to a community school to use its resources.
Okay, so it's resource based. So there are the resources, like you said, there's medical things, so they can go and use those resources from that.
Right.
Okay.
Right. And I know there's one school in Lodi, Lawrence Elementary, and it's not on the school campus. It's actually off the school campus, but it's adjacent, where they have community medical services. So Lawrence School is a Title I school. We have a lot of immigrant families, especially Hispanic families. So again, because it's nearby, they can literally walk around the block and go to it's run by the county health department. So there are services right there.
All right, perfect. Thank you. Yeah, I think you've addressed some of the question that I had, which is more on terms of the biggest barriers, but there are more barriers that are impacting the students. And I think this goes on affecting their long-term ability to become the people that they want to be. What are some of those barriers, apart from transportation, which has been really reduced? It's impacting their mobility to be able to participate in these activities. What are some of the things that the schools or the students are having that is actually impacting their long-term sustainability in terms of being the teachers, the next generation leaders as well?
Well, number one is parent involvement.
Okay.
And especially since I teach middle school, parents tend to be more involved at elementary and then again in high school. And the middle school kids kind of drop off. But it really goes to parent involvement. And coming from I've always worked at Title I schools. These parents, not only do they not have transportation, but they're often working, 2, maybe 3 jobs. So they're not working with their youngest learners on reading to them, and helping them with their homework. And even the older kids checking in on them. Hey, did you do that homework? Is it ready to be turned in tomorrow? Those are really, really important. And that's a bigger policy issue when we talk about, paying people a living wage and, so they don't have to, so one job is enough, right?
Correct.
That's a huge policy issue for me. The whole distribution of wealth, but yeah, that's a big issue that, I alone, I don't know how to impact. Having them getting parents educated, having that school be a hub as well as to, throughout their children's career, in elementary school, hey, this is what you need to do to get your child to keep moving forward. And in middle school, same thing, having parent classes or seminars or something like, hey, your kid's about to go into high school. You need to make sure these things are done. And then again, in high school, if they're interested in going to a Cal State or a CSU, they have to fulfill the A to G requirements. What are those requirements? What are the requirements to graduate? What are available trade schools that these kids can go to? And did you know that they can go to community college tuition free for 2 years? Yes, there's other ancillary costs such as books and transportation and all that, but at least their tuition is paid. We need to do a better job of educating our parents going through there and, making sure that these kids at least graduate from high school. We also have to attack generational poverty. Here in Stockton, we had Mayor Tubbs, and he did a guaranteed income. And they track that. He was a Stanford graduate, and Stanford was the one who cracked it. And they saw how having this income helped families and helped these students. There were better student outcomes with these families who had this extra money, because they would now spend money on books. Where, going to a bookstore is expensive. They would not necessarily do that, but they would do that. They had more money for transportation. So getting their kids to and from after school events or opportunities was there. So it's all, there's just a lot of societal, systemic things that need to be addressed. And they're huge barriers. I don't know exactly how to do that, but Those are, yeah.
Yeah, and I think sometimes what is so painful to see, as you mentioned, is some of these parents are working 3, 4 jobs.
Mhm.
And actually, when you see the work they are doing the work so that most of our foods, especially in agriculture,
Mhm.
is cheaper than if we mechanize them or we did something else. So to me, yes, when I see that, and I've seen that. I remember when my son was growing or playing soccer, some of the parents could not even come and see their children play soccer because they are busy working 16 hours a day. Yes, so yeah, yeah, it's a systemic issue that is very prevalent, and how it's going to be resolved, nobody knows.
Yeah, I want to bring in a story. So I had a former student of mine, very bright young woman. She was of Hmong ancestry, and she earned a scholarship to Cal Poly San Luis Obispo. It was a full ride.
Mm.
Family didn't want her to go because as a woman in that society, especially going away to school, was just not something that they did. And so I know that she reached out to several teachers, including myself, to talk to the parents. And, we all kind of said, look, what this is going to do for your family in the terms of generational income
Correct.
is huge, because now you're going to have, this is the first person going to college. You're going to have this person as an example. And she's going to make a lot more than having a job with just a high school
Mhm.
education, right? And so they finally, were convinced to let her go. But what they did is they had a family member move to San Luis Obispo with her
Closer.
to keep, yeah, because you can't have a young girl on their own. They kind of don't like that. But hey, she graduated, and I believe she went to nursing school
Oh,
after that.
wonderful.
Yeah.
Wonderful, wonderful. You know
Yeah.
that, and thank you for that, because this is where we want to see the teachers. I think at least empowering even those parents, because some of this information they are not aware of, and the impact that income gap between the person who is in who just finishes grade 12, and the person who gets the graduate from college.
Mhm.
Yeah. So there's I think, for parents to learn, because most of the time they're not even in teacher parent meetings because they can't afford to miss their work. And the thing then you ask is, we want to grow the next generation students, and the brilliant students. How can we do it? Uh, because their parent, it's not that they don't want to, it's because they can't afford to miss the job. So
Exactly. Yes. And that's, that's the other thing being a teacher. I mean, we don't just deliver content in a classroom.
mm-hmm.
We try to look at some of these students and say, hey, what's your next step here?
Mm-hmm.
Where are you going to go?
Mm-hmm.
Um, and I have heartbreaking stories of students as well, where I taught. There were a lot of Southeast Asian gangs, and I remember with one of my students, it was in 8th grade, and he was hanging out with the wrong crowd, and doing some things he shouldn't do, and he was really bright. I mean, he was really, really bright. And we were telling the parent, you need to, you're paying for that phone, you need to restrict it, you need to restrict his access to social media, this and that. And the mom said, well, I don't want him to be mad at me. And one of the teachers said, do you want him to be mad at you, or do you want him to be dead? And, we all kind of looked at her like, but the sad story is, when he was a freshman in high school, he was shot.
Oh my God.
Yeah, he and his cousin. And the rumor is, because they were all juveniles involved, so you didn't get a lot of details. The rumor was that it was a drug deal that went bad.
Wow.
And the teacher who said that, came to me and she was just in tears. She goes, "Oh my God, I can't believe I said that." But I said, the thing about it is we were all thinking it.
But we didn't.
We were all thinking it. And it was heartbreaking because he was bright. He could have done anything he wanted to do. So you've got, but that's what they're exposed to. That's what they see. They see the easy money, supposedly, they're trying to, help their families because they probably see their parents working those 16-hour-a-week jobs. They have siblings at home that, need to be fed and clothed and housed. And it's
heartbreaking.
It's heartbreaking. So
one other important aspect, I know you've touched on quite a bit, but let's talk about educational outcomes. What impact does access to resources have on educational outcomes? And how does equity in education connect to economic opportunity, economic status, and social mobility?
So equity in a classroom means that you are trying to get this child to be able to pass your class. I don't know what else to say, but in elementary school, we have standards-based report cards. In secondary, we still do, the traditional A through F grades. But we want these kids to pass. We want them to have the knowledge. We want them to be able to use that knowledge. We want them to have the skills to communicate that knowledge, right? So by having equity, if you're the whole idea of having equity is making sure the outcome is the same no matter who the student is. So then how does that impact going forward? Well, then a student is more likely to graduate from high school, right? A student is more likely to, especially in high school, hopefully by then they figure out what they need to be successful and hopefully advocate for themselves a little bit more. Hopefully a parent can see what their student needs to be successful and advocate for that student with their teachers and the counselors and everything else. If students and parents, and I should say guardians as well, because not all students live with a parent, but if students and guardians feel like they have a partner in this, then it builds that whole sense of community, right? When you have that community, you want to do what your peers are doing. If your peers are graduating from high school, then, oh my gosh, I'm going to graduate from high school. If my peers are all looking at colleges, oh, wow, I should be looking at colleges, right? So that goes into that economic opportunity, right? And that social mobility. Some students don't get that at home. I had it at home, but let me just tell you, my dad had his JD, my mom had a master's in education. And I knew from the time I was in first grade, I was going to college. It was not an option, right? And there were 5 of us. We all went to college. It was not an option. Our parents were very, very vocal about that. There are families that don't have that, right? Cool. So, the schools, the community at the school, their peers, we all have to be championing that student to keep moving forward and to become a lifelong learner.
Correct. Yeah, and I think as leaders, as teachers, as communities, we all have to play a big role in advocating for that. I think,
and society as well. Society has to do more to encourage these kids. We're talking right now, in this current economic scenario, they're talking a lot about AI, and AI might be replacing certain jobs. I have my own opinion on that. I don't think it's going to happen as much as they say. I just don't.
Yes.
But okay, so then now what's next for these kids?
For the kids,
Because we
yes.
can't have them all sitting in front of their phones when they're, when they're 18, 19, 20. What's going to be coming up? Where are they going to be useful? Okay. And we have to be looking at reaching or recognizing what that is and trying to give those students the opportunities to explore
Correct.
what's going to go on.
Correct. And I think there's a lot of impact. You see kids on the phone, they are young, they are on the phone constantly. What is the long-term impact of the utilizing as AI has its own place? But what should we also be advocating in order for them to be aware of how not to utilize the phone 24/7? That's
right. And the American Pediatrics Association just came out with some guidelines for younger kids, which I think are great. But I think they need to expand them because even older kids, the teens and tweens, starting there, I have just seen education change since everybody had a smartphone in their hand. The attention is not there. I've even had parents saying, well, you're not entertaining enough. It's like, well, that's not, I was not trained to be an entertainer, but okay.
Educator.
Yeah. I think that teachers get vilified for a lot of things that we have no control over.
Correct.
And so I think that society needs to look at teachers as trying to solve issues rather than cause issues. I think there just needs to be a mindset. I mean, it kind of turned a little bit during COVID when people goes, oh my God, I didn't realize how hard you guys work, how hard this is. But then, as soon as COVID was over, that stopped because we wanted masks in our classrooms because, we didn't want to get sick. If we get sick, who's going to teach your kids? Yeah. So it was,
I think, we used to say that the village, I think the village should raise the children.
The village.
Yeah. But it takes a village to raise a child. I think I remember even when I was growing up, I think if somebody saw what I was doing may not be right, my parents knew. But I think nowadays it's rare that they come to your parent to say, this is what I saw of your child. So I think that village needs to come together. That village needs to realize that once we help one child within that community rise up, we actually educate that community. And I think sometimes that's what we are forgetting. The time, I think I wish we had more time, but I'll maybe go and ask before the last question is maybe it's for you. It really pertains to you and how you are working, continue to work in this environment. That is not easy to be a teacher than it used to be maybe before or in different ways. So after so many years that you've been in this field, you continue to be committed to education despite its challenges that you face. What makes you continue to stay in the field and continue actually to lead, to support these 1,400, not 14,000, 1,400 educators, and also the community, because not only do you support the educators, you're also supporting the communities that you serve. So what makes you continue to just forge on?
That's a good question. Because I'll tell you, every teacher I know, it's like at some point during the year that they're like, that's it, I'm quitting, I'm done, I can't do this anymore. And it could be something a student did, a parent did, a new mandate coming down from the school district, a new law that was passed. I mean, there's always some trigger. And I think really, I mean, when it comes down to it, we love children and we see the bright, the shiny side. We know about the dark side, but we see the bright side and we want that to shine. And I really think that that's what it is. I mean, I have to deal with a lot of situations with my members where, a parent is making accusations about, the teacher, and working through that, to get everybody on the same page. And a lot of the times, the parent is like, it comes down to, parent doesn't know the whole story, or, there's other things that going on, but it's just, we don't sit down like we used to. As a community, we don't sit down and say, hey, I'm seeing this issue with your student, and I really think that they would benefit from, after school tutoring, or even before school tutoring. I would, or even at lunch, I would always offer students, if you need it, I will, I realize you take a bus, come in at lunchtime, let's sit down, let's get this done, right? Or even work with another teacher. I would get another teacher saying, hey, can I pull this kid so he can make up a test? Can he come into my classroom during this period so he can make up a test? I would work with other people on my campus. And so, I mean, I think it just goes down to that. It's like where, the whole thing with community is communication. We got to get back to that. We got to get back to talking to one another and realizing that what teachers really want in the end is the best for our students, and for parents not to be, if you get them to realize and think that we have other agendas. We don't have any other agenda. If I could indoctrinate your kid, I would indoctrinate your kid to be in class on time and ready to learn.
And finish all the assignment.
Yeah.
And graduate.
Yeah.
So it's the passion. It's the passion and the dedication that teachers have to ensure that the next generation students, leaders, are actually doing their work so that they can get to where they want. That's what I'm hearing. All right. Thank you. All right.
Right. It sounds like we need a lot of collaboration. The community, the teachers, the parents, the students themselves. But you shared great information, and I'm sure it's been very beneficial to our listeners. So as we close, maybe just one thing, what message or piece of advice would you give to someone that's listening right now, maybe to a parent? How do they navigate all of this? What advice can you give as we close?
Don't be afraid to ask for help. There are counselors, even in elementary school, there are counselors. Go talk to the principal, go talk to the teacher, ask for help, because we do have resources that we can point you to. So don't be afraid to ask for help. We're all struggling. We struggle with our kids. Ask for help.
Wonderful. Thank you. Thank you, Lisa. As we are closing, we find that equity in education truly begins with us being aware. And it doesn't end there. It demands us to be courageous. It demands us to be committed. And it demands collective action from communities, from teachers, from parents, from everybody who really want our next generation of students to get ahead and be able to fulfill their duties in future. And when we invest in equitable systems, we invest in human potential, and that return is immeasurable. So let us move beyond recognition to responsibility. Let's act boldly, let's partner broadly, and let's ensure that every child has the resources and the opportunities to thrive. And if that happens, then we have all contributed to the development and empowerment of our next generation.
As we come to a close, a few words from myself is Equity in education isn't about doing more, from what we have heard. It's about doing what matters. When learners are supported according to their needs, potential is unlocked, futures are strengthened, and communities rise together. So let us prioritize what works, invest where it counts, and measure our success by the lives that we change. Thank you. Thank you
You.
for such a wonderful conversation, Lisa. And thank you to our listeners. We look forward to seeing you in our next episode. Thank you for joining us on this journey to elevate and inspire. Until next time, lead with purpose and grow with passion.
Yay! Thank you, Lisa.
Thank you.